Hi, this is Derek Braggs with Meticulous Word Ministries, and today I have put together a teaching entitled, Does God Still Require a Tithe? It is based on Malachi chapter 3. Now, for a long time, tithing has been a debate inside the body of Christ. Are we still required? Is it under the law? Is it outdated? So by the end of this assignment, we will be able to answer all of those questions. We will define and discuss what tithes and offerings mean, their purpose, and the different types. In particular, tithing, what did it refer to and its purpose. We will explain the 7-year cycle of tithing. We will discuss the 12 tribes of Israel and identify or set the tribe of Levi apart. We'll talk about the New Testament law of giving. We will discuss when tithing ended, and more importantly, when it was re-implemented. All of these things will be answered. These questions will be answered by the end of our study today. And I hope that it sheds light or make things clearer for you. I hope you enjoy. Leave comments. You can also follow us on Facebook at Meticulous Word Ministries. Thanks.
Nobody seems to care.
So we're at Malachi chapter 3, verses 8 through 10.
Malachi 3. Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed thee. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offering. Ye are cursed with a curse. For you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. And prove me now herewith, said the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it.
Okay, so basically this has become the the scripture used to enforce and or justify tithing in church. And giving money to the church. But my things that I want you to consider is, what if I told you that tithing was never about money and that we had developed the wrong meaning of tithing? And the second thing is, what if I told you that tithing was under the law and in the New Testament they did not teach tithing? Those are the two things that I want you to consider. Okay, so the first thing is, what does tithe and offering mean? Because it said, yet ye have robbed me in tithes and offering. So the first thing we have to do is we have to define what tithe and offering means. Now, according to Strong's Concordance, tithing means, is from the Greek word, the Hebrew word maaser, which means 10th part, payment of a 10th part. That's what tithe means, a 10th part. Okay? Offering is from the Hebrew word terumah. It means a contribution, or offering to God, an offering of grain or money, etc. Okay, so we understand what tithe is just a 10th part, and offering means a contribution or offering to God. An offering of grain and money is the two examples of offering. So the second thing is, what are the types of offering? We're going to go through all of these so that we can really have an understanding of what's going on, what took place, so that we can develop the proper understanding of tithes and offering. Okay, what are the types of offering? We find these types of offering in Leviticus 1 through 5. Okay, there are 5 main offerings in the Bible. Okay, the first one is the whole burnt offering. This was for atonement. We find this in Leviticus chapter 1. That's the whole burnt offering. Then chapter 2 explains the grain offering or the meat offering. This was a gift to God. Chapter 3 discusses the peace offering. This is for fellowship, worship. The fourth type of offering is the purification offering. This was for unintentional sin. That was in chapter 4, Leviticus chapter 4. And in Leviticus chapter 5, we find the reparation offering. This is for the restitution of deliberate acts. That's in chapter 5. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to put something on your mind. There is another offering that we will consider. It's called the willing heart offering. I'm just going to give that to you now, and then I'll come back and explain exactly what it referred to. So once again, those 5 types of offering are the whole burnt offering, the grain offering, the peace offering, the purification offering, and the reparation offering. Okay, everybody with me so far, right? So now here's the thing. The purpose of the offering system was for worship and to atone for sin. The offering's purpose was for worship and to atone for sin. Okay? That's why it was 5 main offerings. And like I said, I'm going to give you that 6th offering later on, but that 6th offering did not fit into this. Worship and for to atone for sin. Okay? Now, what are the types of tithes? Now, in order to properly understand this, the tithing system was part of a 7-year cycle established by God. It was a part of a 7-year cycle established by God. Remember that. So there are several types of tithes required by God, and the system operated on a 7-year cycle, which corresponded with the Shemitah, which means every 7 years, a sabbatical year. Shemitah, 7 years. So we go to Leviticus 25. Verses 1 through 7, and this is going to explain this. We're talking about what? The types of tithe. We're talking about this 7-year cycle, the Shemitah. Okay, so Leviticus 25 and 1, verse 1 says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord." So right there is telling us that what this tithing is for what? What the verse 2 says? When ye come into the land, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. Okay, that's first thing. So this tithe is for when they come into the land. Okay, verse 3 says, 6 years shall sow. 6 years thou shalt sow in thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. How many years?
6.
6 years. Okay. But in the 7th year, verse 4. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the what? Land. Okay. The 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land. A Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. So that was in the 7th year. Verse 5 says, "That which groweth of his own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thine vineyard, thy vine undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land." Verse 6, "And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee and for thy servant, and for thy maid, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee. And for the cattle and for the beasts that are in thy land shall all the increase thereof be meat." So what it is saying is in that 7th year, you're not to go out there and prune it and do like you would normally do. But everything that grows on its own, you can eat of it. It's for the poor and for the traveling priests. You can eat off of it. Y'all understand that? But you were not to harvest the land in the 7th year. That was to be done year 1 through year 6 were you to actually work the field. And also it said that even the cattle, you don't put the cattle out there to work it either. All right? Because and the Sabbath was rest. Okay, so it was a Sabbath for the land. That's very important to know. So now that we understand that, let's go to the types of tithe, the actual types of tithe. First, there was the yearly tithe. The yearly tithe we find in Leviticus 27, verses 30 through 34. Verse 30 says, "And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the trees, is the Lord. It is holy unto the Lord." So right there we're starting to see some tithes. It's saying all the tithes of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord. It is holy unto the Lord. Okay, verse 31 says, "If a man will at all redeem aught of his tithes, he shall add thereto the 5th part thereof. And concerning the tithe of the herd, here go another tithe of the herd, or of the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the 10th part shall be holy unto the Lord. Okay, that's enough for us to get an understanding of that yearly tithes. Okay, and let me say this right quick, because if I say something that's confusing, please stop me so I can explain it. But right there in verse 31 is something that's very important. It says, and if a man will at all redeem aught of his tithes, he shall add thereto the fifth part thereof. So that means that if he wanted to keep his tithes, that he was to add a fifth, which is 0.2%. So that made it 12%, because a tithe is what? 10th. So hold on to that for a second. I'm going to be back to explain something to you about that. Okay? Remember that. All right? Because a tithe is what? A tenth. Okay. The second type of tithe is the festival tithe. We find this in Deuteronomy 14, verses 22 through 27. Verse 22 says, thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed, that the field bring it forth year by year. You're tithing what? The increase of what?
The seed.
The seed that the what?
The field bring forth.
Field bring it forth year by year. Verse 23, and thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose to place his name there. And now watch this. The tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil, and of the firstlings of the herd and the flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. 24 says, and if the way be too long for thee, so that thou art not able to carry it, what are we talking about carrying? The tithes. Okay? Carrying your tithes now. If the way be too long for you to carry it, or if the place be too far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name there, when the Lord thy God has established thee, watch this in 25, then shalt thou turn it into what? Money. And bind up the money in thine hand, and shall go unto the place which the Lord thy God shall choose. Right? Now watch for that when you get there. In 26, and thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusteth after, for oxen, or for sheep, or for wine, for strong drink, or for whatsoever thy soul desireth. And thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, and thou and thine household. And the Levite that is within thy gates, thou shalt not forsake them, for he had no part in inheritance with thee. So what this is saying is, for the festival time, 3 times a year, the males of Israel had to appear before the Lord. That was 3 times a year. They had to appear before the Lord. So let me, and we find this we know this to be true because it's in Exodus 23 and 14. Says, 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Now let me cover that feast, the rules of this feast, because all of this is important for you to understand about tithes and offering. The rules of the feast were, number 1, it had to be in the city where the temple was located. So the tither may be required to travel to that city. That was the first thing. Then 2, Israel provided all of the food for that festival. Okay? Number 3, the city where the temple was located, if it was too far, the tithe was converted into money, and the money was taken to the temple where the city was. Now, once they got in the city, then it was used to buy whatever they needed for that festival. Y'all get that? Once they would instead of bringing the tithe, if it was too far, they would convert their tithe into money. Now I take this money to the place where that is established, and they buy whatever they need for the festival. And 5, the meal was shared with the Levites, the widows, the strangers, and the poor. And the major thing was they was required to rejoice. Okay? Y'all got that? So that was just the rules for the festival, because all of this I'm giving you extra information so it can give you a better understanding of tithes and offering, basically the tithes. So, now let me tell you this. The place where God has set his name was known as the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, good.
You just said something about if the animal wasn't needed. So, who is making that decision on what's needed?
Because, okay, you're going to know once you get to the place, because what happens is, remember, it's a festival. Israel had to provide everything for the festival.
Israel meaning
All the tribes, once they got to that festival, they had to, because this is before the split. Okay, so all of them were called Israel at that time. So Israel, once you got to that place where God had it established, then, okay, if you've converted it into money, now you can take the money and buy whatever.
You buy what your heart desires.
Yeah.
If you feel like you want to eat fish,
Yeah.
you buy fish.
So now, the Ark of the Covenant, the place where God established his name, we see that a lot in Scripture, but actually that's referring to the Ark of the Covenant. And basically it was moved. God had required Israel to move it several times, but it wasn't until Solomon built the temple, which became a permanent place, that the Ark of the Covenant never moved again. Okay. All right, so now let's get, we've covered the recap of the tithe. We covered the yearly tithe. We've covered the festival tithe. Okay, now let's go to the third year tithe. We find this in Deuteronomy 14, 28 and 29. Deuteronomy 14, verses 28 and 29. 28 says, at the end of 3 years, thou shalt bring forth all the tithes of thine increase the same year, and lay it up within thy gates. And the Levite, because he had no part nor inheritance with thee, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, which are come within thy gates, shall come and shall eat and be satisfied, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hand, which thou doest. So, and right there, within thy gates mean their jurisdiction in that area, okay, in that city or whatever, okay. And let's go to Deuteronomy 26, 12 and 13 kind of gives us an understanding, describes basically like the same thing too. Verse 12 says, when thou hast made an end of tithing, all the tithes of thine increase the third year, which is the year of tithing, and hast given it unto the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that they may eat within thy gates and be filled, then thou shalt say before the Lord thy God, I have brought away the hallowed things of mine house, and also have given them unto the Levite, and unto the stranger, to the fatherless, and the widow, according to all thy commandments which thou hast commanded me. I have not transgressed thy commandments, neither have I forgotten them. So basically this means that the third year tithing, or the third year tithe, occurred during the third year and the 6th year.
So every 3 years.
Through the third year and the 6th year. Because remember, it's a 7-year cycle now. Right? So we understand it. Everybody clear on that, right? Okay. The fourth type of tithing is, fourth type of tithe is the tithe of tithes. This was the Levitical tithe, the tithe of tithe. Okay, this is Numbers 18, verses 26 through 28. 26 says, thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, when ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you for them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up and heave offering of it for the Lord, even a tenth part of the tithe. Okay, now let me say something. Now, who were the Levites? Does anybody know who the Levites were? Okay. Huh?
The workers of the church.
So that's right. They were the workers of the church. So let's read this. Deuteronomy 10 and 8. At that time, the Lord separated the tribe of Levites. So they were separated by God to bear the ark of the covenant. Remember, that's the place where God put his you might not have that in your notes. You can write this down, but that's Deuteronomy 10 and 8. Deuteronomy 10 and 8. And this is going to be God explaining the tribe of Levi. Deuteronomy 10 and 8. So it says, verse 8 says, at that time the Lord separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister unto him, and to bless his name unto this day. All right? Deuteronomy 10 and 8. And verse 9 says, wherefore Levi had no part nor inheritance with his brethren. The Lord is his inheritance, according to the Lord thy God promised him. So watch this. Remember this. Remember we said before, I said, we always say 12 tribes of Israel, but there are actually 13 tribes, right? Because the 12 sons included Joseph and Levi. But what happened is Levi was taken out to be the priest. God separated Levi in Deuteronomy 10 and 8. They became the priests, right? Joseph, instead of Joseph getting land, his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, got land. So Ephraim and Manasseh replaced Joseph and Levi. So that's how you still have 12 tribes. So that's 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, now let's jump back into Numbers 18 and 27. We were talking about the Levitical tithe. Okay? Verse 27 said, well, Matt, let me go back and read 26 just in case you forgot. Thus speak unto the Levites and say unto them, when ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up an heave offering of it for the Lord, even a 10th part of the tithe. So basically what has happened, the Levite received the tithes from the 12 tribes, right? And then they were required to give a 10th of what they received to the priest, which was Aaron and his sons. You got that? So Levite was who? Levites was everybody that worked in the church, in the temple, were Levites. But they were still required to take a 10th of what they received and give it to the priest. So that's why it's called the tithe of tithe. Just to further explain that, Nehemiah 13 and 5. Nehemiah 13 and 5 says, and he had prepared, it may not be on there. If it's not on there, write it down. Nehemiah 13 and 5 says, and he had prepared for him a great chamber, where aforetime they laid the meat offerings, the frankincense, and the vessels, and the tithe of corn, and of new wine, and of oil, which was commanded to be given to the Levites, and the singers, the porters, and the offering of the priests. And the porters were the basically like the janitors or the gatekeepers. Okay, so that's who the Levites was. So who received the tithes? The Levites received the tithes, right? Yes. Everybody that worked in the temple. And then the Levites were in turn required to give a 10th of what they received to who?
The priest. To
the priest. Okay, y'all with me? Okay. Now let's go to the 7th year. We briefly touched on what happened in the 7th year, because in the 7th year we said what happened?
The year of rest.
It was rest. You know, they could eat it if it grew freely, right? On its own. So Exodus, when we go to Exodus 23, 10 and 11, it says, in the 6 years thou shalt sow thy land and gather in the fruits thereof. But in the 7th year thou shalt let it rest and lie still. And the poor of thy people may eat. And what they leave, the beasts of the field shall eat. And in like manner thou shalt deal with thine vineyard and with thine olive yard the same way. Okay, so watch this. In the 7th year, it was considered a sabbatical year. There was no tithing. Okay, we already said that it was a Sabbath time or rest for the land, right? There was no sowing or reaping. There was no harvesting for the storehouse. Israel was allowed to eat whatever that grew naturally, and animals couldn't work the land either. I said that earlier, okay? So I'm reiterating these things. The Levites and the poor had the freedom, and they could eat off the land. This is not the Sabbath day. This is not the Sabbath day. This is a Sabbath of the what? The land. No, this is a Sabbath of the land. Because you got to understand this. You got to understand that the Sabbath day is what? Considered concerning a what? Day. Yeah, and because what God had established in the 10 Commandments, remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. We're talking about he was talking about the 7th day. All right, but this is talking about the Sabbath of the land. So watch this. So basically, rest. Just like man was required to rest in that 7th day, the land is required to rest in that 7th year.
So it's the rest of the year.
Right, 7th year. Because 7 is associated with rest. And this when we're dealing with the Sabbath. Okay? Y'all with me?
So
right?
the connection between the land and the day,
Is rest.
well, yes, God rested, but that's the provision, that all those other days you get to get your provision and all of that, but then you don't. God has provided all you needed, so you rest. The land rests and you rest.
But watch, I'm gonna take you somewhere. Remind me at the end of the study to make a connection to you.
Okay.
With that. But it was all about rest. Let's stay there. Sabbath, 7 day was about rest. Sabbath of the land was about rest. Okay? But I'm going to come back to that, Teresa. Please don't let me forget. Okay, now let me give you another piece of information that's important to know too, because all of this is going to be important later when we start to recap and you start to develop an understanding of this. Also, in that 7th year, there was debt cancellation for Israel. Okay, if anything was owed, it was released. Okay, in that 7th year, right? We go to Deuteronomy 15, 1 through 4 tells us that at the end of the 7 years, thou shalt make a release. And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lendeth aught unto his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact it of his neighbor. So he can't reinstate that debt. Or of his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. Now watch this. Of a foreigner thou mayest exact it again. But that which is thine with thy brother, thine shall release. So if they was not of Israel, then you can put it back on them. Verse 4 says, save when there shall be no more poor among you, for the Lord shall greatly bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it. Okay, so that 7 year there was a release. You got rid of all of the debt. Okay, please remember all of that. Okay, now let's go here. What did tithing refer to? Now we've already said that we've already read scriptures where we saw that tithing referred to corn, wine, oil, herds, and flocks. We already saw that in the scripture, right? Yeah. Okay, let's go through some more scripture. Leviticus 27, 30 and 32. And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or fruit of the trees, it shall be the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord. Actually, let's go to 2 Chronicles 31, 5 and 6. All right. And as soon as the commandment came abroad, the children of Israel brought in abundance the first fruits of corn, wine, and oil, and honey, and all the increase of the field, and the tithes of all things brought they in abundantly. Okay, so we saw honey that was new and there. Let's go to Nehemiah 10:37. And that we should bring the first fruits of our dough and our offerings and the fruit of all manner of trees of wine and oil unto the priests to the chamber of the house of God, and the tithes of our ground unto the Levites. And the same Levites might have the tithes in all the cities of all tillage. Okay, now let's go to Matthew 23 and 23. Because we're covering everything that's talking about tithing. Okay? 23 says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cunning, and have omitted the weightier laws, matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye have done, and not to leave the other undone. So what we see is tithe referred to agriculture, fruit, trees, dough, livestock, wine, herb, spice, and all, but never silver, gold, or money. Y'all with me? Okay, so now let's say, well, what is the purpose of tithing? Okay, so first of all, in order to understand this, we have to understand, let's take into consideration Matthew 5 and 17. It says, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So, and we know that law that Jesus came to fulfill was the law of who? The law of Moses. Mm-hmm. Right? So let's take that into consideration. Jesus fulfilled the law of Moses. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. He fulfilled the law of Moses. Deuteronomy 12 and 1 says, these are the statutes and judgments which ye shall observe to do in the land which the Lord God of thy fathers giveth thee to possess it, all the days that ye shall live upon the earth. Okay, so write that down. Write Deuteronomy 12 and 1 down. Do y'all have that? Write that down, because that explains what the laws of Moses were. Again, these are statutes and judgments which ye shall observe to do in the land. All right? Okay, so now let's get back to the purpose of tithing. Let's get back to this, because I was just giving you an understanding of a few things so that you can take into consideration to develop a proper understanding of it. So this will make sense. Purpose of tithing was in Deuteronomy 10 and 8. At the time the Lord separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to stand before the Lord to minister unto him, and to bless his name unto this day. Wherefore Levi had no part in the inheritance with his brethren. The Lord is his inheritance, according to the Lord thy God, to what the Lord thy God promised him. Okay? So basically what we're saying is that since Levi, remember, God separated them. They didn't get an inheritance of the land with the 12 tribes, right? So what God did is took the tribe, took the tithe from the 12 tribes and gave them to Levi, right? Because of him doing the work of God. And then he took a tenth of his and gave it to the priests, because all of them had separate jobs. The Levites, they were the ones that took care of the temple. Everything in the temple. But then in order to sacrifice for sin and those type of offerings, you had to bring that to the priests, which was Aaron's and his sons. They had to be holier. So, and it was like only one was able to go into the holies of holy and sacrifice your sin. So y'all seeing how it go? The 12 tribes paid a tenth to Levites, who pays a tenth to the priests. All right, y'all with me, right? So that's the purpose of the. So basically, the tithe was it was given of the Holy Land. The Levites were entitled to the tithes because they had no inheritance of the land, and of the tithes, a tenth was given to the priest as a heave offering. Okay, and watch this. Today there is no Levitical priesthood. Y'all understand that?
But the church still practice. The pastors pay a tithe to the bishop.
Go ahead.
So I mean, that's where they get this from, a tithe of the tithe. They pay a tenth of what their church take in.
Okay. So watch this. So now, remember I said that tithing referred to agriculture, fruit, trees, livestock, dough, wine, herbs, spice, and oil, and it never included silver, gold, and money. I said that, right? Now, some people will argue that what? That the agriculture, the livestock, the various herbs, and the spices were Israel's money. They said that was their money. So now, let's consider this. Did Israel have money? Okay, go to Leviticus 27 and 31 again. Leviticus 27 and 31. And if a man will at all redeem aught of his tithes, he shall add thereto the fifth part thereof. So what that is saying is, okay, if tithing referred to money, it would be like saying, okay, if you don't want to pay your 10% of your money, then you add a fifth to it and pay 12% of your money. That doesn't make sense. You see that? So, but it lets you know that they had money. Because in order for you to add a fifth to it, that means that, okay, you don't want to pay of your crops, of the Holy Land, then you add a fifth to it and pay with your money. Remember, because if the place was too far, you converted your tithes into what? Money. Right? So that proves that what? The tithe and the money existed at the same time. So therefore, watch this. Therefore, that means that what? Tithing wasn't the money. Y'all get that? So watch this. Let's connect it back to Malachi. So since we have all of this, we've defined what tithing was, what it referred to, who was it for, the purpose, all of these things. Malachi 3 is what they use to justify what? Tithing, giving your money. Right? They made tithe be money, but we see in the scripture that tithe never referred to money. So watch this. You have to understand that what was happening is the Jews had been in captivity in Babylon, right? So Babylon represented everything that was opposite of God. So they had gotten involved in all of these idol worship and all of this, right? Right? Y'all with me?
Right.
So what had happened is the system that God had set up, the tithes and offering, they had got away from it because they was involved in the other stuff that was happening around them. And God, remember, the most important thing is God gave his law to who? His people. So they had forsaken what God had said, and they was participating in everything that was contrary to God. So you know what happens when they start participating in that system? The system does not sustain itself. You see what I'm saying? So now and just to prove that, in 1 Samuel 8, it says, according to all thy works, which they have done since the day that I brought them out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. So this was talking to Samuel when they started asking. Now they're so focused on everything that's happening around them that they want to implement the system that the other people had. Other people had a king. So now Israel is saying, give us a king too. Malachi 3:6 says, for I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. So God is saying, it's me who has kept you. Right? I haven't changed. Verse 7, even from the days of your father, ye are gone away from mine ordinances and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. But ye have said, wherein shall we return? Now stop right there. He's saying, you have not kept mine ordinances. And what was those ordinances? The statutes and judgments. The laws of Moses. He's saying that y'all ain't kept these. And the laws of Moses, these statutes and judgments for what? Was once they got into the land, this is what they were to govern themselves by. And he's saying, you done got away from that. You haven't kept mine ordinances. So now he's saying, but ye said, wherein shall we return? Verse 8, will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me, but ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and in offerings. These ordinances for the land. So watch this. Rob means to defraud, to spoil. And I put Proverbs 22 and 23 in here because it's the same word, and I want you to see it in a different sentence, in a different scripture, so that it'll make a little bit more sense to you. Okay? For the Lord will plead their case and spoil the souls of those that spoil them. Destroy, diminish. That's what it means. So it's saying that when will a man rob God, it's saying that, remember, they are not doing what God said to do. So will a man rob God? You're saying, well, can you defraud God? So you're saying by not keeping his statutes and his judgments, you're saying that God is not who he say he is.
So you're destroying the relationship with God.
You're saying that God is not who he say he is.
I'm just putting.
No, I'm saying.
God is in a relationship with you still from him.
Yeah, but it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that because he said right there, guess what? Return unto me and I'll return unto you. So guess what? What it's saying is y'all have separated yourself from me because you haven't been obedient to what I had, to what I said. Because we have established that, guess what? If they would have kept God's command, the statutes and judgment, then what? The system would have took care of itself. So you have gotten away, you have robbed me. You're saying that I'm not God, that my system don't work. That's what you're saying. When you go out and try to do something a different way, you're saying that what God said to do, nah. Because the thing is, what you trust, what you believe, that's what you're going to do. So in the beginning, there was what? Doing what God said to do. But then they start paying attention to the world. You know what? Forget what God said. They didn't actually say that, but guess what? That's exactly what they said. Forget what God said. Let's go do like them.
Let's go see.
The people that did not even get the system, the people that have no idea how the system is supposed to work, you're following them. You've benefited from the system. And now you're getting away from it. Go ahead, Salon.
What just came to my spirit, example. Say if, Shawan, I give you a debit card every month for $1,000. But all I ask you to do is give Teresa $100. You've been collecting them $1,000 for years, and you didn't stop giving. You're not giving Teresa $100. You're robbing me. Because I'm supplying you, but you're not doing what I asked you to do. And that's what the Lord was telling Israel. I'm supplying your need, but you're not giving to what I told you to give to. So he said, you're robbing me.
And so also consider what it does to Teresa that need that 100. The poor, because remember his system was in that 7 year, the poor, all of them going to come and be able to eat of this. So what are you doing to the poor? You're exploiting them. You putting them in another state. And these are who? These are God's people that you're doing this to. Because God going to take care of his people. But by you not doing what you're supposed to do, then nobody is benefiting from the system that I established. Go ahead.
I'm just going to read Proverbs 22 and 22, the one before 23. Rob not the poor, because he is poor, neither oppressed, afflicted, and negate. And that's why we all talk about the church not doing its job.
Because God has said, God has set up something to take care of them. Because he said that the poor are always going to be with you.
Yes.
Because they believe what God said.
Right. And God said what? It's more of a blessed to give than it is to receive. I'm blessing you so that you can take care, so this system can take care of itself. You see? That's what he's saying. So watch this. Let's get back into Malachi 3 and 9. Ye are cursed with a curse. See, because the church is saying because you ain't giving your money, you're going to be cursed. No, ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Because you're not doing what I said to do, that's why you're cursed. Because you can't benefit from what I've established. That is the curse. Bring ye, watch this, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me how now herewith, said the Lord of hosts, if I will not open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive. So watch this. It says, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse. So watch this. The tithe, we already said that it was concerning to what? The things of the land. The flock, the herd, the food, the corn, the wine, all of this. Bring all of them into the storehouse. This is the temple. This is where they kept everything. Because, and this is where, who is? The Levites. Bring it to the storehouse. That there may be what? M-E-A-T. Meat. In mine house. You see that? And what?
What do you mean by meat?
Food. M-E-A-T. Food. Yeah. That there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, said the Lord. So God is saying, prove me. I'm going to do what I said to do. Take advantage of hold me at my system that I established. Bring the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. You got to take care of my people. Because what happened is, once they stop taking care of the people, now guess what? These people are on their own. So in a sense, they become like the poor too, because they benefited from this system that was established. You see? You see that? So watch this. It says, and if you do what I say, I will, if I will not open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there may not be room enough to receive. Because the Levites represented God. He set them aside for him to take care of his business. You see? And watch this. So watch this. This further proves that it's about the land. Come back to you. And I will, hold on. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes. Now, what is the devourer? It was a thing that ate up the crops and stuff. It referred to beasts and birds and stuff. So it said, I'm going to rebuke the devourer for your sake. And he shall not destroy the fruits of your what? Ground. The fruits of your ground. Because see, in the church, we made fruits be what?
Money.
We made that be money too. But it said, I will not destroy the fruits of your ground. Because tithing referred to that holy land. And neither shall your wine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. So guess what? I'm going to make sure the crop is mature, that it produces, that it's on time. I'm going to make sure all of this when you take care of my business. You understand that? Y'all see that?
Right. You do what I tell you. I mean, you do what you tell me.
And I'm going to take care of everything else. And when you do all of that, then all the nations shall call you blessed. For ye shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts. See that? See? So the thing is, now now we're understanding that this has nothing to do with money. But the thing is, we have gotten to a point where we make a word. Remember we said that the Old Testament was written in what? Hebrew. New Testament in Greek. In order for you to understand what that word meant back then, not what it means now, what it means back then, you got to be able to study that and see what it is. So now tithe, we made tithe be money, but it wasn't money back then. So that means that you changing it into money now changes the entire meaning of what it was. And you can't do that. And I'm coming back to you, Shawan. We're almost there. Okay? So watch this. We said that, okay, the church teaches that there is a New Testament law of giving. And to justify this, they say 2 Corinthians 9, 6 and 7, which says, but this I say, he which soweth sparingly shall also reap sparingly. And he which soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. All right. This has two purposes. It's talking about money, and it's talking about that farming system, right? Every man, but watch this. Here's the part of that puts it together. Every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. See, that's the money aspect of it. Watch this. Every man according as he purposeth in his heart. So let him not give grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. Because watch this. Listen to this. God's saying, don't give me what you need. Don't be sitting there saying, man, I gotta go ahead and get this. That ain't doing you no good. Don't get my light bill due, but I ain't paid my tithes. Well, you ain't got enough for your light bill anyway, so you might as well pay it. Mm-hmm. No, because that's of necessity.
Yeah.
God didn't tell you to give that, because he said what? God loveth a cheerful giver. So they said that is the New Testament law of giving, which concerns your money. But watch this. The thing is, this is not actually the New Testament law of giving, because whenever God asked for money, God said, as purpose in your heart. And to prove that, let's go back to Exodus 25. Starting at verse 2. It says, speak unto the children of Israel. So watch this. God is getting ready to build the temple. Now we need some valuables for the temple. So watch this. God says, speak unto the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. God talking to Moses, bring me an offering. Remember I said earlier that 6th offering that I was going to add was that free will offering. Speak unto the children of Israel, Moses, that they bring me an offering of every man that giveth it willingly with his heart. Ye shall take mine offering. Now watch this. Now watch what he's asking for. And this is the offering which shall take of them gold, silver, brass, blue, purple, scarlet, fine linen, goat's hair, ram skin dyed red, badger skin, shittim wool, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for sweet incense, onyx stone, and the stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. You see that? Y'all got that? So it was never about money, but whenever God referred to the money, he said, whatever is purpose in your heart to give. Think about my goodness, how good I've been. I don't want what you need. So watch this. Let's jump back into this so we can finish, because we got a few more minutes. Watch this. So now that we're in the New Testament, we see that tithing had what? Tithing had ended. There was no tithing in the New Testament. Okay? Y'all understanding that? See, because now when we go back to Jesus saying, think not that I am come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it, we understand that he was talking about the law of Moses. Now, we understand that under the law of Moses that the priests went to God on behalf of the people, on behalf of Israel, right? And that and the tithes was to be given to the Levites, who was then to give it to the priests, right? That was under their system. But what happened is after Jesus came, he became the ultimate sacrifice. When that veil was torn from top to bottom, it symbolized that we no longer needed to go to priests on our behalf.
Right. That
we had to go to the priest who then went to God on our behalf. Now Jesus took the place of the priest, and now we go to Jesus, who goes to God on our behalf. Y'all understand that? This is explained in Matthew 27 and 51. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. And look at Hebrews 4:14. 4:14 says, seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast to our profession. So when Jesus fulfilled the law, he became the high priest. He ended the Levitical priesthood. So if there's no Levitical priesthood, then guess what that says about our tithe? Ain't nobody to bring the tithe to.
Amen.
You see that? Do y'all understand that part? So this is why. See, and even during Paul's time, they were not supported, because Paul told you that this further proves that tithing has stopped, because in Acts 18:3, he says, and because he was of the same craft, he abode with them and wrought, for by their occupation they were tent makers. He's letting you know that what? He was working. 1 Thessalonians 2:9 says, for ye remember, brethren, our labor and travail, for laboring night and day, because we would not be chargeable unto any of you. We preach unto you the gospel of God. Let me read it in the Message Bible. It says, you remember us in those days, friends, working our fingers to the bone, up half the night, moonlighting, so you wouldn't have the burden of supporting us while we proclaim God's message to you. So that's letting you know that, guess what? Paul was a great man in the Bible. He wrote a majority of the New Testament. But he's letting you know right there that Paul had a job, and they was up working, so what? The people didn't have to support them. Because understand this, if anybody was going to be supported, Paul definitely was going to be supported, because he was a mighty man of God. But Paul let you know, no, I got a job, and the burden wasn't on y'all. I'm giving y'all the gospel. So watch this. If tithing had stopped in the New Testament, then what happened? How did we get to this point where we are today? So watch this. Let me give you a bit of history. Here's how tithing was re-implemented. Cyprian was a bishop of Carthage. He was an early Christian writer. And what he did is he attempted to promote the practice of supporting the clergy financially, as they did in the Old Testament. So now we're in the 3rd century. So we're like 300 years past Jesus. They're trying to bring it back. Right? This one man is starting to do this. He believed that in the same way that the Levites were supported by the tithe, the clergy should be supported by the tithe. Okay? But here's the thing. It wasn't widely accepted then. It was like, I don't know, you're kind of crazy. You see? So time goes on. They go through a bunch of different things of trying to re-implement it. And it wasn't until 585 that tithing emerged, when they restructured the church. The Catholic Church, they start to restructure this thing. So watch this. In the first stage, what happened is they removed the spiritual gifts from the laity. So from the regular members, you don't have no more spiritual gifts. That's what they did. That's crazy, but that's what they did. So how a man can remove what God gave you is amazing. All right. Second stage was they made a distinction between the bishop. And he became, he was equal with the elders of church, but they made the bishop a little bit higher. So watch, we're seeing man's fingerprint on what God's plan was. And man is beginning to change this thing, restructure everything. All right. The fourth stage was that the bishop, the elders, and the deacons were encouraged to stop their secular work. Because now if you stop your work, then now we'll have an excuse to say that, hey, you need to be supported because you're taking care of God's business like the Levites was. Remember, they didn't have a job. So now they're putting all of this in place. They're trying to bring it back. You see? And the fourth thing was that the tithing doctrine was the fifth stage was that the tithing doctrine was adopted. So basically what happened is, so now tithing is accepted now. They got people to buy into it. We're tithing now. But what happened is, they were selective in the practices that they re-implemented, right? They didn't put everything. They didn't put in the 7-year cycle. No. What they did is they put in the yearly tithe, which was every year you give. And then they changed it from being about the land, the holy land, to making it being about just your money. But when you get rid of the festival tithe, which was every 3 years, when you get rid of the Levitical tithe, the tithe of tithe, get rid of all that and just keep one, it's showing you the imprint of man, that you're still robbing God. You see that? Because God just said, God done already completed this. There's no need for this anymore. Because his son has came, right? His son has came and fulfilled the law. Because even when you think about the Sabbath, let's go back to what Shawan was saying about the Sabbath. The Sabbath day and the Sabbath land was about rest, right? Right? Jesus says, I have rest for your soul. You rest in me. And that's what took the place of the day that man needs to rest. That's why we don't have to remember the Sabbath day anymore and keep it holy. Why? Because our lifestyle has become presentable to God. Present your body as a living sacrifice. You see that? Y'all understand that? Huh?
What's the religion and purpose?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know who practices it.
Seventh-day Adventist.
Seventh-day Adventist says that Saturday is the Sabbath. Yeah. But the thing is, people are so focused on a day that they're missing God.
But
God
it's
is
not
not
only them. A lot of people, it's a lot of religions keep the Saturday as the Sabbath.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So there are different ones that keep it.
Till Sunday at 6 a.m.
And let me tell you, the issue is that people read certain parts of the Bible and they take out certain things. And see, that's why even when in Malachi, we have that being there to enforce tithing and giving in church. Because when you put those other scriptures around it, you see that something else is going on. You see what I'm saying? Ain't no devourer of your money. You know what I'm saying? What ordinances are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? That's why you have to know the entire story, because the Bible is 66 books about the same story about Jesus, and it's called connected. But you have before Jesus, when Jesus came, and then you have after Jesus. Because before Jesus came, they was doing things, it was a physical thing that was happening. That's why they had to bring these offerings and stuff, right? When Jesus died on Calvary, now after Jesus, guess what? Our lifestyle became that offering. We don't have these different offerings that we're making anymore. Y'all understand that? No longer. You see what I'm saying? We don't have to make sacrifices. We don't have to do all of these things. It became spiritual. That's why the law was given to the Jews. But now after Jesus, it was opened up. Salvation was opened up to everybody that believe. So the thing is, we're not required as Gentiles, people that didn't have God, we weren't given these laws. So guess what? God would never hold us responsible for what he didn't give us. Y'all see that? Because even when we was discussing sin, it says that before the law, sin was in the land, but it was not imputed. They wasn't charged for their sin. You know why? Because he hadn't given them the law. Once he gave them the law, now your sin falls under this. But it's the same thing with us. We were never given that, so now we wasn't held accountable for that. We accept Jesus and we learn. Y'all follow me? Does that make sense? Everybody get that? So that's why even with this, like Shawan was saying, did they not know or what it was? It could be a combination of all the above. They didn't know, but also that's another thing. Don't mess up my money. Because the other thing is the tithe of the tithe. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what about this? The Levites split the tithes. Let's consider that. But now everybody in the church not splitting the tithes. You give your tithes to the church, the pastor. You see what I'm saying? So you see how it's different. Yeah, they want to point to the Bible about certain things. No, tithing is in the Bible. Okay, but what about the 7-year cycle? What about all of these things that was in the Bible concerning tithe? We ain't doing all of that. So how do you justify one thing without and leave out everything else? That shows you that it's not God. And let me tell y'all real quick. I'm gonna just mention this to you. There are people that we didn't really have time to to discuss Abraham, because Abraham in Genesis 14, Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek. But actually, remember what I said a tithe meant. Tithe means a tenth. Actually, Abraham paid a tenth to Melchizedek, but it was of war. So it was a spoil of war. So this had nothing to do with tithing. Because we find that even in Numbers 31, we find that when Israel went to war, they paid tithes of the spoils that they had took from war. You see what I'm saying? So that means that what Abraham paid was that same thing as those spoils, had nothing to do with tithing, that system. Because once again, tithing was under the law. under the law of Moses. And the law of Moses, what led the people to Jesus, to a time where Jesus was going to fulfill all of that and complete everything. And now here's the thing. Terrence asked this question a few weeks ago. And I mean, it was a very profound question. He said, well, why the change? Why the change? But it really wasn't a change. This was God's plan the whole while. Because before time, God established all of this. And now as things fall in place, it's all a part of his plan. Even though to us, it looks like it's changing. Because even when the Bible said, Moses said, keep it forever, really forever in that sense means your lifetime. God has established.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing changed.
It's just the way our eyes see things.
It's and
The way we see the world.
Yeah, that's what it is. We're seeing, so now we're starting to see what's happening, and it looks different to us. But actually, okay, all of this is God playing. Because God said, Jesus said, I'm the beginning and the end. So it's already done. But now we're seeing parts of it. But now we're also going back and seeing the origin of how we got to this point, of why it is like it is. But a lot of people have gone back into the Old Testament, and they're sitting there looking at that, and they're trying to stay there and make that be continual. And it can't be done. So real quick, let me close this out. The thing is, we found out that offerings were for worship and sin. Tithing is an Old Testament principle. Tithing was produced from the Holy Land, and it only referred to agriculture, fruit, trees, livestock, dough, wine, herbs, spice, and oil. We know that Israel had money, so it didn't refer to the money. Tithes were divided among the Levites, which was everyone that was in ministry. Tithing was reimplemented approximately 585 years after Christ, and the division of tithing, though, was selective. They didn't implement everything that was in place, like the 7-year cycle. We understand that giving is a free will only. It is only a free will. And we understand that Abraham's tenth that he gave from the spoils of war was a tenth. And that and also the other thing was why we understand that they didn't practice tithing, because the church practiced asceticism, which is that being poor. They thought that when you are poor, you are close to God. That's what the early church believed. Being poor was being close to God, which is why, I said this before, why they started dressing up for church in the 1800s. At the end of the 1800s is when they actually started dressing up for church, because that was a time when, after the Industrial Revolution, when it was mass producing stuff and things became cheaper and everybody was able to get things. So that's why all of that happened. So, like I said, so I mean, we'll close out and then we'll pray. I'm gonna come to you. So let us pray. Father God, I thank you for this lesson, this assignment, and God, I pray that there is no repercussions for your word going forth.
HIV is on the rise, spreading throughout this land. We can't keep pretending to be blind. We have a generation that doesn't care. Whatever's popular is okay.